everyone. Welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I have a very interesting guest who's going to go for a very long walk on the podcast today. We're going to talk about building community around your message and what you're doing. And Travis is with me today. Great background, serving his country, and now taking on an epic journey. Travis, we got lots to talk about. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I am very well, David. Thank you for having me on here. It's definitely a privilege and an honor to be here.
It's amazing. So, Travis, we've talked already, which is great. Our listeners haven't met you yet, possibly. Tell them a little bit about your service to your country, a little bit about your background, and then we're going to jump into this big walk you're going to take. Is coming up. Let's start with a little bit of your background first, so Travis.
Well, a little bit about my background. I grew up in Maine, and if you don't know where Maine is, it's the most northeastern state in the United States. You'd be surprised at how many people did not know what Maine was when I joined the military. Anyway, I grew up in Maine, small town, like 1,800 people, graduated a year early just to get out of school because I did not enjoy school, and then went right into working because I grew up pretty much just working as soon as I could drive. So got into work at a shipyard, actually, and then left the shipyard about a year later to join the military, went in the Marine Corps. And that was kind of a dream of mine since I was a kid. But also I joined because I went through a divorce, and I was like, well, perfect timing. Let's go run away and join the military, not the circus, the military. So I do that. And my first duty station, I get sent over to South Korea. So I was stationed over there for 1 year. And that was really cool to, see a new country and learn from a different culture and learn from a different military as well. That was interesting. And then I got sent over to Yuma, Arizona for my last duty station, my last couple of years there. And I was living in a desert. So it was a little bit different and hot, very hot. So I found out I'm not as fond of deserts as I knew I wasn't fond of deserts. But anyway, it was a good time for the most part. I learned a lot of really helpful and useful things from military experience, even though I didn't stay in longer than 4 years just because that wasn't for me. But there's plenty. It's great for other people. And so I'm thankful for my time in. And then after that, I got out of the military about 4 days before COVID shut the world down. So 4 days after, I'm looking for a job, and then COVID's like, nope. So I go unemployed for like 6 or 7 months. And then my fiance at the time, she recommended I apply elsewhere for a job. So then I moved up here to South Dakota for working on a wind farm. And then I was working on that wind farm for about a year. And that was 2021. That's pretty much like the tail end of my downward spiral, because from running away to join the military was kind of like the start of my downward spiral, just running away from my problems and not wanting to deal with life. And that kind of accumulated in 2021. I got 2 DUIs and I got fired from my job for showing up with alcohol in my breath. So that second one, I really realized I should probably make some different decisions in my life. And I got into personal development, started learning how to do certain skills for online business so I could not have to rely on a job. I could transition into the business world. And then I had to serve some time in jail in 2022. I had to serve 10 days in jail for my 2 DUIs. And that was pretty much like rock bottom for me because I'd never been to jail. I'd never been in the system. And I never anticipated being in jail. I thought this was going to be the worst thing ever. And I was honestly really scared about jail because, Hollywood and TV shows and movies, it's dramatized, but it was just boring. I had plenty of time to read. And actually, when I was in jail, it was perfect opportunity to read a few books, but I read the New Testament because it was just there. And I actually grew up in a Christian family, but I was never really connected to it because I didn't understand it. And it was kind of forced on me. But now I had this time and I read it. Definitely had a come to Jesus moment in jail. It was on my 7th night in there, May 12th. And then from there, after I got out of jail, I felt the urge to start the business. So I told boss that I had at the time, I was like, I lost my license, so I can't come back to work. I didn't want to work with them anyway. Anyway, so I just kind of burned the boats to start the business and was working at that for pretty much the rest of the year, and came across I was in a networking event and actually came across an article that Global Rescue did on debunking the world's longest walkable road. And this lady shared that with me, and reading through that article, it was where the initial inspiration came from, because I was like, oh, this would be such a cool adventure, walking half across the world and through a bunch of different countries, up and down and all around. And I kind of put it on the back burner because I was like, I need to focus on the business and then get that situated, and then I can do fun things with my life. But other things were in store, because I was very successful at failing my first business. I had like one client. So in like 9 months, I had one client. So that was at least something. But I pretty much burned the boats on that for the most part as well, and just focused on the planning, because that's where I felt like I was meant to be putting my effort and my energy. And so as soon as I started questioning, like, how could this be possible? How could this be done? What would be needed? So on and so forth, doing the math, it kind of just started like a download into me. Like, okay, here's the different stages of the walk. Here's how it could be done, and different, just breaking up into smaller pieces. It's not a whole elephant. It's just a bunch of little pieces along the way. So when I realized that it could be possible, that was kind of the jump start into the whole planning process of how to bring all these pieces together. So then that brings us pretty much to current day.
Amazing. So your plan is to walk a long distance. How many miles is it, and where are you starting from?
So it's right around 14,000 miles, and I'm starting in Cape Town, South Africa. I'm going to be going up and over all the way to Magadan, Russia.
Okay, that's a long way to walk.
Yeah.
What's the time frame? How long do you think this is going to take?
So walking 20 miles a day, 6 days a week, resting on the 7th, it'll take about 117 weeks and 4 days, give or take.
Wow. Okay, so how are you going to be building community around this walk? Because obviously it's going to cost money, and it's going to be food and somewhere to sleep. There's all kinds of stuff that you need on this journey. What is your plans around community building in advance and during and after this amazing walk?
Well, for one, I got to learn how to social media and start developing my little tribe on social media, whatever that means. Anyway, probably going to be doing Instagram and stuff. But for the other parts of the community building and for the resources and logistics along the way, I'll be kind of researching the local areas where I'll be going through to find out what organizations or NGOs, or like what kind of organizations are there that I could potentially work with, or kind of like do like I help you with your things and you give me a place to sleep and maybe some hot food. However that works. I'm definitely going to be carrying some camping equipment, so like a tent, sleeping bag, sleeping pads, stuff like that, so I can sleep outside, because I'm really honestly probably looking more forward to sleeping outside than I am getting hosted. But at the same token, getting hosted, I'll be able to meet more people and develop more of a community and hear more stories from people in that area. So it's either way, I'm really looking forward to it. And then for the other logistics and resources and stuff like that, currently working on putting together research for the kind of sponsorships that I'm going to want and need along the way. So like clothing, I'm going to need clothing. And I would love to, like, if Cool is listening, I'd love to work with Cool. They're like the top of my list because they're just amazing. So there's several companies that I've been doing research into to basically see if there's any kind of if there's any degree of resonation between their goals and my goals, to see how we could work together. So that's a process all on its own. And then really just, I'm going to need some food. I'm going to need some water. There's some really cool water resources that I'm going to be looking into for like water purification and filtration, having just a small filter and purifier in a water bottle, basically. And there's a few different kinds, which there's some really cool technology in that front. And then food is pretty much I'm going to carry as much as I can and then just see who offers food. It's half really planned out to the detail and half winging it. Seems like a good approach, but we'll see.
Which part of that frightens you, the planned out or the winging it part?
Neither. I mean,
neither. Good.
I'm happy to plan as much as I can because it's going to take a massive amount of planning, and I already have a massive mind map working for it. But I'm also really looking forward to the spontaneity of it and just see how things play out. But definitely going to rely on as much of the planning as possible.
Huh. So you've actually looked through and mapped. This is all mapped out already. You know exactly your path that you're taking. Is there anything along this path that you're like, that's going to be tricky?
So kind of, yes, but I'll come back to that real quick. Funny thing about mapping out the route is earlier this year, I went on to Google Maps and typed in like Cape Town, South Africa to Magadan, Russia. And I had this route just kind of populate. And so I could study it for a time. And I actually saved a PDF with the directions for the entire route. It was like 107 page PDF for the entire route, directions and stuff like that. Shortly after, I think it was March, I went to go back and study the route again. And it was not available on Google Maps anymore. So now I'm having to cross-reference things. So that's a fun challenge on its own. The challenge areas, really the only main concerns that I'm thinking of are like the civil dispute areas like South Sudan, Syria kind of as well. And then getting into Russia because I need to get invited into Russia and have sponsorship and it's going to be the longest part of the journey. So I need to get some special permissions for that to be possible. Other than that, I'm not really concerned with the other details, the logistics, the whatever happens. This is what I'm here for. So I'm just looking forward to going through the process. And like in my mind, it's already done. And I'm just reverse engineering it and catching up to it.
And that's a little bit of your systems background coming to play. I can hear it in your voice and your planning, and talk about how you're leveraging your systems background as far as the plans for your walk. Right.
So the best way to make a system is to have the outcome you want and then reverse engineer it in the most effective way possible. That might not be the best way, but that's the best way I've learned so far. And in the military, I had the opportunity to be, I don't know if it's an opportunity. I was put in the admin office for a while to kind of take care of everything for the department. And that I had to get systemized. So it was do this thing at this time, do this thing at this time, this thing at this time, and basically have like an assembly line of tasks to do that I normally do every day to make sure everything's taken care of, and then basically take care of the other miscellaneous things. Had I known about automation tools back then, I probably would have been a lot less stressed out. Because automation tools are just spectacular, make things so much easier. So without getting into too much of the tools yet, because there's a lot to kind of map out and organize and stuff like that. But really the systems, it goes back to that having the overall concept and just breaking it down into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. So it basically becomes one task at a time, and that builds up into like a million tasks, but those million tasks come up into certain groups of tasks, and then those groups of tasks comes up into a higher group and so on and so forth. So when you just break them down, it's kind of like the nested frames that Jordan Peterson talks about with the psychological development of being and being human and whatnot. It's just applying that principle to accomplishing goals, which is really the same thing that he does. But in this sense, it's more of a long walk.
Yeah. Because our audience is podcasters primarily, and they're looking at starting something, and They don't have the systems in place to pull together a big idea and then all the steps it takes to make something happen. They get lost in the details, whether it just seems overwhelming to do all the steps to do the final thing, or they just want to do the final thing and skip the steps. They get caught in the process. So from your point of view and your background, for somebody trying to create something new like content or podcasting, what would you say, where would a good starting point be? Should you have a goal in mind before you start planning, or start with a plan and work towards the goal? What do you think?
So when you were back in school, you're doing math class, did your teacher ever say, show me the work? Well, you have the answer, but show me the work to see how you got to the solution. Basically, it's kind of like the same thing where you have an objective that you want for a process that you do, whereas a bunch of tasks put together that are kind of unconscious tasks where you might not consider them an actual task, but doing all of these things in a certain order and sequence gets this thing done. Basically, you want to start off with the smallest thing that you were trying to get accomplished, and whatever it is that the smallest thing that you want to get accomplished that you do repeatedly, because pretty much that doesn't change. If you're doing it repeatedly and it's necessary and it's a small thing, it's adding to the whole and it's a necessary thing. So then what you do is, no, you don't have to, but a good thing you could do is either record yourself doing whatever that whole process is and then analyze every single thing that you're doing along the way to see, do I actually need to do this, or can this be automated into can this be put into a system that an automation tool can take care of? Or you can basically write down each step that you take. And what I do is I put it into like a Word document, like, okay, I have this overall thing that I want to get accomplished. First, I do this, then I do this, then I do this. I can't forget this. And then I do this, and then I do this, and then there's this as well. So basically outlines a ladder of each rung is a step that you take towards getting to the top. And then if you go on to if you want to do it yourself, you can go on YouTube and learn all about Zapier, because Zapier is one of the greatest tools you could ever use for automations. But basically, identify what tools you're using, identify what steps you're taking in the process, identify what steps you're taking in the order that you're taking them, and then basically play around with these automation tools to see, okay, yeah, I can put this one into in a system. This can act as the trigger. So when this happens, these other tasks subsequently happen. And then this accomplishes the whole thing that I wanted to do. So now I'm not taking half an hour to do something. It's accomplished in, half a second because of automations. So basically, it's just taking the smallest things that you have, breaking them down into the smallest steps, and then seeing how that can be mapped into a system or a tool that can do all of those things for you. But it has to start with the smallest things that are the most necessary that you do on a repeat basis to accomplish the whole. Hopefully that's not too confusing.
Right. Yeah. Well, if we go back to the walk that you have planned, when I asked you the question, how long this is going to take, you knew you had an answer. And I think when we talk podcasting or content creation, writing a book, whatever, we don't always have all the steps figured out and the timelines. You knew exactly how many miles per day, how many days a week, you're resting on the seventh day. You had it all. You have a number, you have an answer, where I think a lot of us fall into a trap where we have a big idea, but we don't know all the little details like that, and we can't answer those questions. And we get caught in that moment where someone says, great idea, how are you going to do it? I don't know. I just want to get to Russia. That's it. I just want to get to Russia. But how are you going to do it? I don't know. Do you know, you have a path? No. How long is it going to take? I don't know. And we get caught in that moment as creators. And that's why I'm happy to have you on, Travis, is to talk about this, because I think we need to plan better, and that'll take off a whole layer of stress where we get caught up in those details that we ignore or don't think about. They circle around and they'll attack because we didn't put time and effort to plan for them. So that's really interesting to me that, again, you were able to give me all the details around your walk It hasn't even happened yet, but I can tell that you have it all planned out.
It's been happening in me every single day since August 19th of last year, pretty much. So so if you know anything about David Goggins and his story, he was like this 350-pound dude doing pest control and kind of just decided one day, I want to be a Navy SEAL. And so he went into the Navy's recruiter's office. He's like, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. And they're like, okay. So he has to lose all this weight. And then he has to go through the military training, the boot camp, and then SEALs training, BUDS, whatever. And he actually spends 18 months going through BUDS because the first 2 times, the first 6 months and the second 6 months, he'd failed it. And he'd also kind of destroyed his shins along the way. So what he was talking about in his book, Can't Hurt Me, was one, do the math. If you break it down into like really small chunks, it's just doing the math. It's the same concept as you can't eat an elephant all in one bite. You have to take it into small chunks. But it's also along the lines of doing the math, but also visualizing yourself doing it over and over and over and over and over again. Because it's kind of like watching a movie. So you watch a movie and it's a wonderful story and you love it and you want to watch it again. The second time you watch it, it's almost a completely new story because you picked up on different things along the way. Because your brain and your eyes can only process a certain amount of information at any point in time. It's like if you're watching a movie, reading a book, listening to music, whatever, there's like 80,000 bits of information going through your head. And you can only process like 20 to 30,000 bits of information per second or whatever it is. So then you take a break, your brain catch up, you go back to it. Similar concept. The more you repeat through a process, the more familiar you are with the process. So what he did was put himself through that mentally over and over and over again to get as familiar with all of the possibilities, all of the details, all of the edge cases, everything that was going to be involved with it. So that by the time he actually got to the point of doing it, he'd already done it a million times. So it was just going through the physical motion of doing whatever it is that he'd set out to do. So it's the same kind of concept. I see myself walking, obviously not the entire road every day, because that would be a 27-month journey, but like portions of the road in different areas, different countries, whatever, trying to visualize what is going to be needed in certain areas, certain times, certain conditions, whatever. And it can go the same for podcasting and creating your systems and whatnot. Go through the process mentally of everything that you're going to need for each episode, whether it's just doing it mentally or actually going through the process of each episode, and then not just calculate, but organize in your mind or in a document or a piece of paper or in a video, whatever, each detail that you discover on each run through. That way, the more that you go through it, the more clear and bigger picture you'll have towards the end of actually implementing that into a system. That way it's covering all your bases at once, basically.
It's interesting. I kind of flash to your typical Hollywood police show where they're trying to solve a case and they have the big board up there and they have pictures of who they're looking at, talking to about the case. They have timelines. They have all kinds of photos and they have the string that attaches this person to that person. And they're and then they go sit down and they just stare at it for a while. Everything's out of their head. Everything is off their notes and it's all on one big board. And they're all just kind of looking at it going, wait a minute. What if A and B were connected? We should look at that, right? But because if it's just in your head or just on one person's piece of notes and not up there as kind of a big picture, you might lose some of that nuance. You might lose some of those connections that could easily make things easier for you. So just getting it out and writing everything out and figuring out what's in your brain, putting it somewhere where you can look at it and kind of making those connect the dot moment. Do you think that would be helpful as well as we create something new?
Absolutely. And to touch on that as well, because that's an excellent point, the more that you do get something out of your head that is an objective or making progress towards your goals, it activates the dopaminergic system, So every time you accomplish even a tiny little goal or a task or whatever towards the overall objective, towards the overall mission, you're activating a pleasure circuit. So it encourages you to do more and then more and then more and then more. So the process of accomplishing an objective or a goal or a mission, whatever, a lot of the pleasure you can get from going after your goals is the actual process of that, because you get more stimulus from the process than accomplishing whatever it is that you set out to accomplish.
Nice. What about getting feedback on your goal from an outside point of view?
That is essential.
For you and your big walk, like, you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know.
There's 3 realms. Yeah, so to touch on that, you know what you know what you don't know, and then you don't know what you don't know. And so get as much into that first little circle as you possibly can, get as much filled out and whatnot, and then venture into the next circle. Like, hey, I know there are things that I do not know about this walk or this project or this podcast, whatever. I'm going to go talk to somebody who has done it already, who already knows something, and learn from them, get their experience, get their insights, get their advice, guidance, whatever it is. And then from there, they can help you to step into the realm of you don't know what you don't know, because they're going to know things that you don't know. So they can help you bridge the gap between what they can provide and what they can't provide that somebody else could help you out with. So you need it. No, there's no such thing as a one-man show or no person is an island or whatever that is, those quotes. First of all, people come from parents to parents. And so right off the bat, we're not a one-person show anyway. So we need external feedback for anything that we're doing. And one thing that I like that Jordan Peterson says is, or he didn't originally say it, somebody else did, but I learned it from him, is the reason why we think is so our thoughts can die instead of us. Because the majority of our ideas that we create or generate or come up with or latch onto, most ideas are dumb and not going to bring you closer to anything valuable. Like, it's not as common as you might think to have a good idea. That's why you need to brainstorm. It's one of the reasons why masterminding is so powerful, because you throw something out there and then you have a bunch of other perspectives coming in to basically pick it apart for all the things that are not going to work about it, all the unnecessary and irrelevant things. And then what you're left with is this core possibility of something that could be good. So then you work on that. And then, you keep building from that. So you need people to kind of help you moderate and differentiate between what's a good idea, what's a bad idea, what's relevant, what's irrelevant. How does their experience influence your lack of experience, and so on and so forth. So you need people. Definitely need people. And it's, without even having gone on the walk yet, I've been able to meet so many amazing people that have taught me about different areas of the journey, different things to keep in mind. Have you thought about this? Oh, no, I haven't. Please tell me more. So feedback is essential from people that have done, from people with the proper experience. If you're getting feedback from somebody who has no experience in that realm, that's a waste of time.
That's going to be more distraction than anything. Yeah. Right. So when you do your walk, is there a way for listeners? I mentioned to you before we hit record, I have listeners and past guests who are in the general area of where you're going to be walking. Is there a way for people to support you during the walk financially? It's going to cost money. You're going to need some kind of income. Is there any way that listeners and people listening to the podcast can support you once this all starts happening? What can we do around the community side on this side of the planet as you do the walk?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm kind of in the process of setting up some of that. What I am working on right now is a book, kind of the whole backstory leading up to the walk, and the more or less a better, more in-depth answer to why are you doing this? Because it is kind of crazy. So that book is All Walks of Life, and that'll be coming out in March, May timeframe. So if somebody wants to check that out, they can support me through pre-ordering. It's right from my site, which we can put the link somewhere. But also if they just want to listen or help share the story, the mission, the message, whatever, share it around. I'm trying to find my tribe, the people who this really resonates with, not only along the way, but who wants to come along on the walk. So like I'll be doing the podcast along the walk to share people's stories that I come in contact with. And local people are more than welcome to, join for portions of the way where if it's around their area, they can come walk for a little while, or if somebody isn't outside of the local area, like the States or UK or whatever, they're more than welcome to come walk for a week or 2 weeks or a month. I'm going to make it as accessible as possible, I guess. Obviously it's not for everybody, but yeah. So right now, the best ways are really the pre-ordering the book or sharing the message. So
it's amazing. So do you have a name for your podcast too then?
Work in progress.
Work in progress. Good. How are you going to do
the Connection Odyssey? So it might be something along those lines.
Okay. How are you going to do the recordings? How are you going to do all that? Just kind of be as you're walking?
Yeah, I'll use
just
my
having
phone
a conversation.
I'll have planning on having at least 1 or 2 people along for like a camera crew to help me film the journey, so we can make like a mini documentary series along the way, and compile that at the end to make an actual documentary. So that'll help me out with the recording aspects of what shouldn't just be recorded on a phone. So I don't know all the answers right now. I'm still putting things together and learning and trying to organize things because there's a lot to organize, but we're going to definitely be documenting the journey.
Good. Are you planning on doing things in advance of the walk through your podcast to help generate community and funding and all that as well?
Recording like the backstory to the lead up, gonna figure out how to do that stuff now and start the podcast early next year to kind of get that up and rolling and see how that's going to work. I'm much more apt on the logistics and the planning than I am on the social aspects. So that's definitely a big learning point for me that I'm learning.
Because the one thing I'm thinking for you, Travis, you could boldly reach out to all of the sponsors. You mentioned the clothing line, water bottle filtration. Get them on your podcast as a guest to talk to them and interview them in advance of the walk, and then give them value by having them on your show. And then that opens the conversation to say, on my walk, I'm looking for resources for these things. Come on my show and talk about your water filtration system, because I'm looking for one and I would love to promote you and maybe I can use it on my walk. And maybe they want to sponsor you at the same time.
I'm glad this was recorded then.
See?
Ideas for the future. Love it.
There you go, right?
The feedback and the
So do that in advance, right? Bring them on, build the buzz, build the hype for the walk that's coming. And people love, Travis, the behind the scenes of a journey. We love these journey podcasts that take us from Travis planning his walk, Travis doing the walk, and then what happens after as we celebrate. We want to come for the walk. We want to come and watch you build this big thing, and then we want to walk with you, hear the sounds of nature as you're walking along in the background and listening to that in a podcast in our ears. We're in South Africa right now, and we can hear nature around you as you walk along talking to us. That is like such a cool experience for us back home or wherever we are in the world. And then that makes us go, you know what? I'm going to throw Travis some money, support him on his walk, because he's taking me with him from this whole journey. So building that community now in advance of the walk is probably a great way to fund and build excitement for what's coming in the future. I would listen to that. I love that.
And to touch on that a little bit, I just had a conversation with somebody earlier today, and this has kind of been a topic of conversation in my support group lately, coaching group, support council. Anyway, getting into the behind the scenes stuff. That's one of those necessities for this kind of thing. And that has been one of the more challenging aspects of what I'm should be doing and haven't been doing, because I'm much more desire to show the actual walk and the progress than the challenges and stumbling blocks leading up through the organization and the planning and the logistics of it. Even though that's a very important part, that part has been difficult. So yeah, working on getting that put together and started and recorded and documented and all that good stuff.
Right. And the other thing, reach out to Jordan Peterson and have him on your show. Why not talk to him? Right? He
That
come
is
on,
one of the next
encourage
steps.
you, right? Bring you some insight, get him in your world, and let him know about you and what you're planning. You never know who's going to listen to this podcast. You never know who's going to hear your voice or connect with you and go, you know what? I've got some contacts that can definitely help Travis in this walk and his planning. Let people help you. That's the one thing that I would encourage you is I know you're a planner and a systems guy.
I never used
but
to be
there
a
might be
planner
somebody
until recently.
right? There might be somebody with connections that could make things easier or better or more effective because they're connected with someone else that you don't know. Again, you don't know what you don't know. But listening to your show and go, I could support them with clothes. No problem. Tell me where to send them.
And that's another aspect that I've been really trying to learn is that it's okay to ask for help. Because that has never been often, that hasn't been a simple task, especially like the stigma on guys, we got to have it all together. But hopefully we can aid in breaking down that stigma because we all need help. And I'm definitely learning that. So
let's jump back to your story. That 7th night in jail, you asked for help.
Yeah, I was reading the book, but the book was reading me. And
but that was a moment where you needed that help and it found you.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't need to ask for help. You couldn't have read the book. You could have put it away. But there was something that night that said you need help.
Yeah. And I definitely would not go back to before God, before the help. My life was completely changed. My personality changed. Like I took a personality test the year in 2021, I think it was. I took a personality test, like one of those 16 personalities, and I came out as an INTJ, an architect. And then I took it again after getting out of jail, it was later last year, and I was an INTP. So my personality literally changed over the course of that year.
Wow. See, and that's the power of a story, right? That can change people, and people hearing your story can change them. And all we have to do is, for those listening that are thinking about starting a podcast in particular, get past the fear of sharing your message and understand that there's only one person who could do your show. It's you, because you're the sum of all the people you've met, the books you've read, the life experiences you've had, the failures, the successes, everything. You have your own unique view of the world that no one can duplicate. So if you're worried about having a podcast like someone else, they can't do your show and you can't do their show. No one else can do your walk. I can't do your walk for you. There's no way. Only you can do your walk.
Right.
So be focused on the fact that you're unique and that you have a unique voice to share with the world and a unique story that no one else can duplicate.
Your unique superpower.
There you go. Instead of your unique selling point.
Yeah. No, it's not selling point.
I like superpower. It's superpower. I like that. That's really good.
That's not for me. I wish it was, but no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good. So the book will be available for pre-sale now. Is that true?
Yeah. Pre-orders. Anybody can pre-order a copy now, and it'll be out in around March, May timeframe. So it'll be out before the walk. And I wrote a kind of an overview to kind of give a brief introduction to the different chapters and whatnot. So it's like 8 or 9 pages. It's on like my landing page, so you can read through it to see if you actually want to pre-order a copy, and if you don't, then you don't have to, like, by all means. But I did an overview that you go to the website, go to like the landing page for the book, and then you can read through the overview. And then if you like it, go to the next page and pre-order a copy. If you don't, then thanks for taking the time anyway.
Nice. And what's the website?
theconnectionodyssey.com. So I'm not as techie as I'd like to be, so there has to be a backslash after the com, or else it doesn't work. Anyway.
There you go. There you go. We'll have all the links in the show notes for that. Anything else, Travis, before we go, for content creators, podcasters, authors, on just getting their message out into the world? Any last thoughts from your point of view? And again, tell us the date you're planning on starting your walk as well.
I guess one thing that I've been learning is you can't spell message without mess. And it all comes together, and your what is it? Your pain might lead to somebody else's healing. And that's been something I've been trying to reconcile. So your message is not just for you. And I'm still learning this too. It's not just for you to learn more about being a more integral person or walking with integrity or authenticity. It's meant to be shared, kind of like with that community aspect, the feedback. It's meant to be shared. And it's easier said than done, but we're all a work in progress anyway. And I'll be starting the walk next June. The actual start date is a surprise right now, but next June.
Good. Okay. Awesome. So we have lots to do. We can support from an audience perspective and past guests. I'm reaching out to you as well, as you may live in the general area where Travis is going to be walking near your community. Would love to hear stories of listeners to the show. Again, past guests reaching out and maybe connecting with you on your walk. I just think it'd be a really cool moment to bring our community together to support you and help build your community as well. Travis, it's so great to have you on. I'm excited to hear the story and follow the journey. I can't wait to walk the path with you through my ears as I listen to you do this. It's going to be exciting.
I definitely appreciate that. It's been an honor to be on here and have this wonderful conversation. I definitely appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to more things to come.
Excellent. And Travis, thank you for your service to your country as well.
Thank you, Bruce.
I always appreciate anyone who can see beyond themselves. And I know that sometimes people join the service to improve themselves, but you are giving of yourself as well. So thank you for doing that for your country.
Thank you for your support.
Awesome. Everyone, all the information's in the show notes. Please go check it out and support Travis. There's a lot of great things happening in the future, and I would love to see our communities rise up and support Travis and encourage him through donations, buying the book. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I could probably support Travis by donating all the equipment and things that he needs to do this walk, if that's you, all the information's in the show notes. Reach out to Travis, let him know that you want to help support him. We appreciate you listening to the show. Travis, thanks again.
David, thanks you as well.